Alright, I have taken this as far as I can in terms of trying to figure out solutions for some of the framing issues here. Knowing that an engineer is going to be required because of the spans and because it's the city of Dayton, I have trying to make this film to explain both to you, the homeowner, and to provide enough information for the engineer to make some judgments about what might be done. But for that reason, some of it is going to be fairly boring to most people. This house is different in that the joists do not run parallel to these rafters, but the joists both at the first floor and at the second floor run across the house this way with both floors, and with the central bearing wall running this way. Most notably, in order to open up spaces, a number of beams have been installed. This one you can't even see it because it is a flush beam and it is installed up above this soffit framing here. There's an HVAC trunk line up through here. There's the trunk line, and there is a flush beam up in here with these joists suspended on it. Flush beam A is up in there. So it is a headache getting to that no matter what you do. The other beam of note on the first floor, the only other one on the first floor, is out here at the front door, and my program says this would pass. It's an 8-foot opening, net clear 8-foot opening from here to the other side, and my member sizing program says that that will pass if that is Southern Yellow Pine #1, and I couldn't find a grade stamp on it. So those are the two beams on the first floor that need addressed or engineered. At the second floor, in order to open up these two bedrooms to the east side of the house at the rear, they took out the bearing walls that came across here, running east-west, and replaced them with this beam for one and another one into this room, and you can see it right here. And these are not, the bearing is not run back into the wall, it comes out on the floor. So there's some issues that need to be solved there as well. These are the two beams I was talking about. Theirs is a 3 2x10 SYP, I don't know what grade. That's that flush beam that's installed up in here with that soffit work and the HVAC line or trunk coming through here, up through here. This is beam B, the second one that might be an issue as well, on the first floor. But on this first floor, I'll start with beam A, what I did and explored with beam A. Alright, first of all, J1A and J1B are the joists. They're under that bedroom and closet at the second floor, and I ran those with a dead load of 6 only, just for the flooring on top and the drywall underneath and maybe a few extra, but left the floor load at the 30, which is going to be required. It's going to be required that those joists, anything new, is at least as good as what existed before. So I ran all of these with 6 pounds dead load and 30 pounds live load, and these pass coming across, coming to that beam. Flush beam A, however, in its existing condition, at 11'7" out to out, and it's not even close, as you can see here. So something needs done with that, and that's with Southern Yellow Pine #1, and I don't even know if that's #2 or #1 up there. Just to explore, if we shorten that span from 11'7", if we shorten that span by 2 feet, not that that's desirable or what the owner's looking for, but if we do that, then 3 Southern Pine #1s will pass. I don't know how you determine that grade. I don't even know how you see it now, because I couldn't see much of it when I was down there. In any event, if you were to shorten that length to 9'7" from 11'7", it passes. So, and I know this is not a desirable thing, because I know what you were trying to do when you widen this. But one way to accomplish it, and no doubt the least expensive of the alternatives, is to reduce that opening to 9 feet. It doesn't matter which side you put that, or which side you shift it to, even if it's at both sides. It doesn't matter. There's the foundation down below, and you can see that our bearing points are fine to shift that opening however you could live with. And I don't know if you can live with either of these. I don't like them, but that was solution number one, is to just close that down. To summarize on the options I came up with for beam A, and this varies a little depending on how we treat that second floor, the issues at the second floor, but largely these are a few of the options for beam A as I see them. The first one, and I don't know if this is desirable, nothing is desirable. None of these options are desirable to me, but it is what it is. So the first one is to cut out that existing 3 2x10s and replace that with 2 9¼ inch LVLs. Since those 3 2x10s though are going to be 4.5 inches thick, you're going to have to pad out these LVLs, and I have you putting 1/2 inch on one side, 1/2 inch plywood or OSB on one side, on the north side, and then 1/2 inch between them, so you end up with 4.5, and somehow drop that in from the top, because the bottom is so locked out that I don't know how that happens. But this might actually be less work and expense to just somehow extract that. I don't know though. In any event, that's option one, and I've specified you're going to increase the length of these screws or nails through those hangers because of that 1/2 inch plywood up on the north side, if you elect to do it that way. There were other products that were 1.5 inches thick, but I could not find them available locally. LVL products, LSL products, that you could use 3 layers and end up with a net 4.5 and not have to horse around with a 1/2 inch plywood. That's option one, cutting it out and replacing it with a couple LVLs, 9¼ inch LVLs. Option two then is reducing that span. Either way, reducing that span so that's a net opening of about 9 feet. Option three entails just installing a new drop beam below that existing beam A, but somehow that's got to be pushed all the way up against the bottom of that, and I don't know how that's done with some of the framing and so forth that's in there already, but that would have to be pushed up against the bottom. And as I recall, when we were down there, because of the ducts, you could see one of them here coming off of this thing at this side and going that way. I think we're having difficulty pushing that all the way up. And maybe we talked about making some legs. I'll probably have to meet you down there again to see if that's even possible. In any event, if it is, putting a new beam below that existing one. And maybe it's dropped some and there are little legs put up to that existing one. But that is option number three. If it can be gotten in there and legs put up or pushed up against it, in any event, you will have to either chow out those existing trimmers, and I don't even know how you get the new one in unless you just remove those trimmers entirely and start over. But this bearing has to go back into this wall. At this end, you can either cut the trimmers and try to get that thing in there, or just install a couple new trimmers underneath it and lose 3 inches on this width. At this end, right end here, you could put your trimmers out here on the surface of the wall, 2 3-inch trimmers, and then put blocking down to the foundation. But that was, I saw as beam option 3 on beam A. That was the only 3 options I saw, by the way, for those, and I still, even now, think perhaps the most favorable, because at the second floor we're going to have some sort of, probably are going to have some sort of beam coming in here, and a beam or two depending on what we do up there, and there's going to have to be a hanger that needs to be fastened here with long nails, and a person's going to have to be able to swing their hammer and get that fastened in. Maybe it can be put in with Simpson fasteners, but it's another consideration and one of the reasons I favor option 1, cutting that thing out of there. because it can come out of there in pieces, because it's not going to be any good for this project in any event. But moving on then to beam B, this one here. These are the existing joists over J1C, and those currently pass with the bedroom loading. Beam B, however, with that 8'6" wide out to out, including the 3-inch trimmers on each side, does not pass at that length. Neither number 1 or number 2 pine passes at that length. If we take that 8'6" and shorten it down by adding a couple trimmers on each side, then we get number 1 southern yellow pine to pass. Number 2 doesn't. It's still 1,000 pounds off of passing. I don't know if those are number 1 or number 2. In any event, if the engineer can determine that they're number 1 and he agrees with this, the solution to remedy the problems with beam B is to reduce that and add 2 cripples to each side, bring that down to 7'6". That was what I came up with for beam B here. Note that when we do cut that opening down even to 7'6" clear inside, number 2 southern yellow pine still does not pass. So a determination has to be made if that is SYP number 1 in order for a 7'6" wide opening to work, unless the engineer has other information. At the second floor, the issue is back here, where they have taken out walls, presumably that look like this, and put in, not these, but they have 3 2x6s SPF in there right now, which aren't doing anything. And I ran, this is the existing joists over the attic, or under the attic. Because that attic is served with a fixed stair like this, all these members in the attic have to be run at 30 pounds per square foot. And when I run J2, ultimately it's called J2C, like this, with 6 pounds dead and 30 pounds live, that member passes for most species. And so I presume that something very similar to this existed over here, and that was taken out, and then the 3 2x6s were put in here. Additionally, there's 3 2x6s back here, not even doing as much work as this one. So that is what needs settled back here. I began by anticipating that perhaps we replace those 3 2x6s, ignore this one, and replace those 3 2x6s with something it would take more than this. But that's what I began with, and to see if these joists at the attic would pass with that kind of a span, joist JA2 and J2B, or J2A and J2B, and they do not pass even with 20 pounds loading, and that's not allowed anyway. So that was quickly rejected as a solution, trying to get anything. You can see both, the long one is obviously going to fail even quicker than the shorter one here. So a single beam did not appear that it was going to be the solution. You know, one of the things I looked at along the way extensively was trying to rebuild these walls, but I know this isn't really what you're looking for up there. Nevertheless, I wanted to see what was possible, and this was quite the exploration. It requires quite a bit of framing at the first floor to end up with next to nothing like what you were looking for up here. And I don't even know that this will work, but this was the closest I got to something that could work at that second floor, option 1. But you can see what is required. All of these joists need doubled, and little legs have to be put in here as well. You're going to have to install new hangers at this end. So this does not even seem like a viable option, option 1. So it's really not an option, but it was shown, if for no other reason than to see that it was not really doable. Option 2 consisted of breaking this load out by putting a series of 3 beams across here, and then trying to pick up these western loads, the western point loads, down at the lower floors. So that's going to be beam option 2. Option 1 I don't really think is something that's desirable at all. If it is, though, we can explore it further. But I abandoned that and then tried to something with option 2, and this is what I pretty much ended up with if we were to do this as a solution for that, to get these joists of the attic to pass and to carry these loads down to the foundation. Option 2 adds these 3 beams shown as sized, and you can change these up however you like if they pass, but these I'm showing the minimum that was showing as passing in my program. So you do that at the second floor, where all these western loads here, or all these eastern loads, are recessed into the wall, carried all the way down to the foundation, and this is buried in that wall. We'll get to that in a moment, how that's carried down, and then these 2 are buried in the wall as well. And at the first floor then, for this one here, you would have to have double joist under it, 2 SYPs under it, and again you've got the issue of trying to connect that hanger up there. The floorboards run this way, so you can remove some of those, but a second beam then to pick up this end of this one would be run there, and that actually has to be LVLs, 2 LVLs directly under that. So I promise no easy options, and I'm delivering. This was resizing, double checking that beam A with these new loads. But the other thing required for this option is, because of this load on this corner here, that has to be carried down to the foundation with a column down here. Now this column, this column could go under that double joist that you have up there, but one way or another, that load has to get down there. These other ones, those other ones, are picked up here at the first floor. So that is the list of things you would have to do to end up, and this should be option 2. I'm sorry, that should be option 2. That's what you have to do. So that was option 2. Option 1 was cutting that bedroom up. Option 1 was something like that, cutting that bedroom up, installing some special members on the first floor. Option 2 is the final look at option 2 at the second floor, and knowing that this stuff has to happen at the first floor, a couple LVLs, a couple 2x10s, and that foundation thing for option 2. Option 3 was a bust. I tried to do this in one, and those will not pass with trying a single member in the middle. So that was all for naught. But this arrived me at the final thing I was going to try up there, which is more or less just to replace these walls as they were with beams, and try to pick up these bearing points on the first floor. And this appeared to be successful if these members can be gotten in, and it consists of 3 and 3 9-inch LVLs. These ones going back into the wall, these ones buried in the wall at this length here, so that we just have a single member on the first floor, and that has to be 2 LVLs under that, like that. And I ran the numbers on beam A, and that will still do it, but this is one chunky hanger here, so depending on exactly where that is in relation to your existing joists, we've got to be able to get 2 9-inch LVLs to do option 4 at that second floor. I might be missing something, and maybe the engineer can come up with something better, but this was the best I could do so far. Even though I know you have to pull back some mechanicals, wiring, and look like water maybe over here. Again, we'll have to mark this. If this is the route you go, we'll have to mark this, but this is probably desirable in terms of getting that open second floor up there back to 4th. And I came back here real quick just to point out, this is actually 3. It took 3 of these to pick up both of those loads. 3 9-inch LVLs have to be situated directly under that second floor wall where those beams would come down. And you can see those are heavy loads, and so it's not surprising that that took 3 of these LVLs. So you have to confirm that you have space to put those 3 in there if this is the option. And remember, this is option 4 on the second floor. And finally, with regard to this sort of arrangement, if you were not able to or did not want to put these in, your next option is to have a column. You might be able to situate that about here, but here at the worst, and carry that into the basement as well. So, and that might be, well, it would probably clear the furnace, but that would be another thing that could be done, so you wouldn't have to put these 3 in here. Because I think this is probably the simplest solution for this area, for the second floor, I'm going to run through the input and output for the beam sizing program that I used for the engineer to see and do what he wants or needs to with that. I don't know if there's a convention to this, but when I look at these members, I'm looking from this way in the diagrams you'll see, and when I'm looking at these members, I'm looking this way at the diagrams you'll see. So starting from the attic, all the roof loads come out here to these walls here and this wall here. So starting from the attic then with J2F and J2G. At the north portion of the attic, J2F down here, it spans and supports coming down from the north south, the 2 beams, LVLs. The loading on those attic members, 30 pounds on the floor and 6 dead. I selected all of these different products. Most of them pass. In any event, those are existing, and we are putting the beam back in the exact same place as the wall once was. So that's F, and the report on that is here with the reactions here. And G was all done similarly. Back here, G is the south portion for option 4, and it spans everything but one of those species passing. And finally, the report. Next, I review beam D5 and beam D6 with the loading from J2F and J2G. For the north beam, D5, here, it spans 11'2" out to out, embedded in the walls on both sides with 3-inch tremors. And here are the loads. These are just linked from these joists. You can see here what the reactions are on the support 1, which is the left side as you look north, and support 2, which is the right side as you look north. This needs corrected, and it won't have any effect. I selected all of these to try to see what it's going to take for beam D5. And these are the solution lists. Because 2 9.5s were the cheapest, that's what I'm showing on the plan. And here's the report for beam D5 with these reactions here transferred over the plan. Going to D6, which is the south central beam for option 4. Obviously has the same span. The loads now are reduced. Both of these come to the top. They're both across the full length of it. One from J2F at the top and one from J2. That's why support 3 at the very end of that one and support 2 at the top end of this one. Unsurprisingly, of course, it takes the same members to do that south half. The final part of that solution, which is at the first floor, is beam C3. So I'll review that now. Well, beam C3 and its attachment and loading on beam A. And I'll review those two right now. So beam C3, joist beam C3, which is the next member involved in this solution is for the west loads, the left-hand loads from D5 and D6. Its span is 16 feet from the south wall of the building up to the beam at the top. And notice I have this face mount hanger for its connection to that existing 3 2x10s, which is why this is shown as Southern Pine. The loads on this, then, this could probably be ignored because this is probably going to have to be added in because it's a double LVL. So this floor loading could probably be ignored, but I've left it in here in any event. This is from D5, the left-hand side, the west side, support 1, and D6, the left-hand side, support 1. Selected all of these solutions. We know that commodity lumber is not going to work. The only thing that they show that will work in 3 plies is 3 9 1/4. And if I take this, you can see that 2 was an option, but 2 is not enough. So it takes 3 on each side. 2 failed on the deflection. So it takes 3 to do joist beam C3, and that means this, at this end, this big chunky hanger going into your existing 3 2x10s in HHUS 5.5/10. 30 16Ds will have to be nailed into that beam from up top. So this is what to consider with regard to solution number 4. The final member involved in that solution is drop beam A4. This is the added drop beam under the existing flush beam for second floor option number 4. This drop beam's 11.6, so 11-foot clear opening with the 2 trimmers on each side. And then these are the loadings. I entered these individually for each joist connection along there, and then for beam C3 here at that end. And 2 9 1/4 are still able to do that because that big connection so far at the end. But that H5.5/10 hanger is going to be at least 7 inches wide. That is all. That is a review of all those members. Here's the report on beam A with the load from C2 here, and then the loads from each of those individual joists here, and the backside load from the north side of the attic right here along the whole thing. So hopefully this helps to clarify our problems. And I am sorry that there were not easier answers for any or all of this. At this second floor, apparently these are passing because they only have the one interruption on one side. Trying to get a passage through there, though, the best I could do was about a 32 or 35 inch opening into here, and that was that option 1. So again, I wish I had better news for you. I can come down there and meet you, and we can talk this over if you like. But we will see what the engineer has to say, if anything, about any of this or all of it. So I'll be in touch, and thanks.